Law on Negotiable Instruments and Payment Transactions. Section 6 Recourse for Non-Payment. Article 43. The holder may exercise his right of recourse against the endorsers, the drawer, and the other parties liable if the check on presentment in due time is not paid, and if the refusal to pay is evidenced. 1. By a protest or any other formal instrument, or 2. By a declaration dated and written by the drawee specifying the day of presentment, or 3. By a dated declaration made by a clearinghouse, stating that the check has been delivered in due time and has not been paid. Article 44. 1. A protest shall be signed by an officer legally authorized to authenticate documents. As long as no such person has been designated by law, he shall be designated by the National Bank of Cambodia. A protest must contain a copy of the check, or the original check may be annexed thereto, and specify the person at whose request the check is protested, the place and date of the protest, the cause or reason for protesting the check, the demand made and the answer given, if any, or the fact that the drawee cannot be found. It shall be made at the place of the refusal to pay or accept or at some other place in Cambodia situated within 10 kilometers of the place of presentment and refusal to pay or accept. 2. The protest or equivalent declaration must be made before the expiration of the limit of time for presentment. 3. If the check is presented on the last day of the limit of time, the protest may be drawn up or the equivalent declaration made on the first business day following. 4. After the expiration of the limits of time fixed for drawing up the protest for non-payment, the holder loses his right of recourse against parties liable on the check, but may sue the drawer under the law of contract and ordinary assignment in an action governed by the law of contract and assignment. Any recovery under this paragraph is reduced by damages for any injury caused to the drawer by the holder's failure to meet required limits of time. Article 45. 1. The holder must give notice of non-payment to his endorser and to the drawer within the 4 business days which follow the day on which the protest is drawn up or the equivalent declaration is made or, in case of a stipulation retour sans phrase, retour sans protest, or any other equivalent expression, the day of presentment. Every endorser must, within the 2 business days following the day on which he receives notice, inform his endorser of the notice which he has received, mentioning the names and addresses of those who have given the previous notices, and so on through the series until the drawer is reached. The periods mentioned above run from the receipt of the preceding notice. 2. When, in conformity with the preceding paragraph, notice is given to a person who has signed a check, the same notice must be given within the same limit of time to his avalosor. 3. When an endorser either has not specified his address or has specified it in an illegible manner, it is sufficient if notice is given to the endorser preceding him. 4. The person who must give notice may give it in any form whatever, even by simply returning the check. 5. He must prove that he has given notice within the limit of time prescribed. This time limit shall be regarded as having been observed if a letter giving the notice has been posted within the said time. 6. A person who does not give notice within the limit of time prescribed above is liable for the damage, if any, caused by his negligence, but the amount of his liability shall not exceed the amount of the check. Article 46. 1. The drawer, an endorser, or an avalosor may, by the stipulation retour sans frais, retour sans protest, or any other equivalent expression written on the instrument and signed, release the holder from having a protest drawn up or an equivalent declaration made in order to exercise his right of recourse. 2. This stipulation does not release the holder from presenting the check within the prescribed limit of time, or from giving the requisite notices. The burden of proving the non-observance of the limit of time lies on the person who seeks to set it up against the holder. 3. If the stipulation is written by the drawer, it is operative in respect of all persons who have signed the check, if it is written by an endorser or an avalisser, it is operative only in respect of such endorser or avalisser. If, in spite of the stipulation written by the drawer, the holder has the protest drawn up or the equivalent declaration made, he must bear the expenses thereof. When the stipulation emanates from an endorser or avalisser, the costs of the protest or equivalent declaration, if drawn up or made, may be recovered from all the persons who have signed the check. Article 47. 1. All the persons liable on a check are jointly and severally bound to the holder. 2. The holder has the right to proceed against all these persons individually or collectively without being compelled to observe the order in which they have become bound. 3. The same right is possessed by any person signing the check who has taken it up and paid it. 4. Proceedings against one of the parties liable do not prevent proceedings against the others, even though such other parties may be subsequent to the party first proceeded against. Article 48. The holder may claim from the party against whom he exercises his right of recourse. 1. The unpaid amount of the check. 2. Interest at a rate determined by the National Bank of Cambodia as from the date of presentment. 3. The expenses of the protest or equivalent declaration, and of the notices given as well as other expenses. Article 49. A party who takes up and pays a check can recover from the parties liable to him. 1. The entire sum which he has paid. 2. Interest on the said sum calculated at a rate determined by the National Bank of Cambodia, as from the day on which he made payment. 3. Any expenses which he has incurred. Article 50. 1. Every party liable against whom a right of recourse is, or may be, exercised, can require against payment, that the check shall be given up to him with the protest or equivalent declaration and a receipted account. 2. Every endorser who has taken up and paid a check may cancel his own endorsement and those of subsequent endorsers. Article 51. 1. Should the presentment of the check or the drawing up of the protest or the making of the equivalent declaration within the prescribed limits of time be prevented by an insurmountable obstacle, these limits of time shall be extended. 2. The holder is bound to give notice without delay of the case of vis major to his endorser and to make a dated and signed declaration of this notice, on the check or on an allonge. In other respects, the provisions of Article 45 shall apply. 3. When vis major has terminated, the holder must without delay present the check for payment and, if need be, procure a protest to be drawn up or an equivalent declaration made. 4. If vis major continues to operate beyond 15 days after the date on which the holder, even before the expiration of the time limit for presentment, has given notice of vis major to his endorser, recourse may be exercised and neither presentment, not a protest nor an equivalent declaration, shall be necessary. 5. Facts which are purely personal to the holder or to the person whom he has entrusted with the presentment of the check or the drawing up of the protest or the making of the equivalent declaration are not deemed to constitute cases of vis major. 6. Liability on a check that has been lost or destroyed may be enforced only against security provided by the party enforcing the check, which to the satisfaction of the court indemnifies the party liable on it against any claim of any other person on the check if it reaches a holder who acquires it otherwise than in bad faith or gross negligence. Section 7. Check collection. Article 52. 1. Where a check is delivered to a banker for deposit to the credit of the customer and the banker credits him with the amount of the check, the banker acquires all the rights and powers of a holder of the check. 2. Unless otherwise agreed, credit so posted to the account is provisional, and the banker may debit the account or shall otherwise have recourse from the customer if the check is not paid. Unless otherwise agreed, any withdrawal of such provisional credit is at the banker's sole discretion and subject to chargeback or recourse from the customer if the check is not paid. 3. Regardless of the lack of any defect, restriction or limitation in, or form or type of Customer's endorsement, the banker's rights under paragraph 1R. I as if he is the possessor of an endorsable check under Article 22, and 2. Notwithstanding anything to the contrary in Article 26, where it otherwise applies. Article 53. The delivery of a check to a banker for collection is a payment order governed by Chapter 5 of this law. In case of an inconsistency with respect to a check between a provision of Chapter 5 of this law and a provision of this chapter prevails. Section 8 Alterations. Article 54. In case of alteration of the text of a check, parties who have signed subsequent to the alteration are bound according to the terms of the altered text. Parties who have signed before the alteration are bound according to the terms of the original text. Section 9 Limitation of actions of recourse. Article 55. 1. Actions of recourse by the holder against the endorsers, the drawer and the other parties liable are barred after 6 months as from the expiration date of the limit of time fixed for presentment. 2. Actions of recourse by the different parties liable for the payment of a check against other such parties are barred after 6 months as from the day on which the party liable has paid the check or the day on which he was sued thereon. Article 56. Interruption of the period of limitation under Article 55 is only effective against the person in respect of whom the period has been interrupted. Section 10 Time calculations. Article 57. 1. The presentment or protest of a check may only take place on a business day. 2. When the last day of the limit of time prescribed by the law for performing any act relating to a check, and particularly for the presentment or for the drawing up of a protest or the making of an equivalent declaration, is a legal holiday. The limit of time is extended until the first business day which follows the expiration of that time. Immediate holidays are included in computing limits of time. Article 58. The limits of time stipulated in the present chapter shall not include the day on which the period commences. Article 59. No days of grace, whether legal or judicial, are permitted.